Hey YouTube, how's it going? It's Quentin here and welcome to tutorial number 21, and in this tutorial I am going to talk to you guys about the Bootstrap carousel. Some people actually prefer to call this a Bootstrap slider. That's what I prefer to call it, but yeah, whatever you guys want to call it, it's up to you. This is just what we're going to be making in the tutorial, and you can see in the demo over here we have a navigation to kind of move the slider either way. We have this little dot nav at the bottom, which we can use to swap between slides. So if I had like 10 different slides, I could skip all the way to the end by hitting the last dot nav. Then we also have a caption, which is text. It's not something that I photoshopped onto the image. This is actual text, which can be indexed by search engines, and it can also be found in a search. So like when the user hits Control F in their browser and like searches for a word, like let's just say assorted, then it'll show up. So that is pretty awesome that you don't have to Photoshop the text onto the image, because people used to do that back in the day. And yeah, the most important thing is the image in the background as well. So now that we've run through all of that, let's actually get started looking at how to code. So I am starting off with this container and a row and a column, and that's kind of given me this look where the slider is centered with the rest of the content. But I know a lot of people like to do this where they have like the content all centered over here, but the slider goes all the way to the end of the browser to meet the sides. So if you guys wanted to do it that way, then your content would have to be in another container like down here below, and the container with the slider should have a class of container-fluid. So that's if you guys want to do it that way. I'm not going to do it that way. So yeah, I'll let you guys play around with it at the end of the tutorial. But for now, let's go ahead and create our parent div that holds the rest of that slider. So I'm going to create a div over here, and I'm going to end that div off. And this div takes 3 attributes. The first one is an ID, which we have to have. The second one is a class, and the third one is a new attribute, which I've never spoken to you guys about before, and that is data-ride. So let's start off with the ID first, and I'm going to give this div an ID of my slider. You could call it anything you wanted, but you know, just for tutorial sake, my slider. Great. And then from here, I need to go ahead and add some classes. So I'm going to add a class of carousel, and I'm also going to add a secondary class of slide. And what this does is it pulls through the styling from Bootstrap that we need for the slider. So if you don't have these classes, the slider is probably not going to work. Yeah, and now after we've done that, let's go ahead and add in this new attribute that I spoke to you guys about, which is data-ride. And you guys have probably worked with the data-toggle attributes, which I mentioned in the previous tutorials. So this kind of works in a similar way, where that data-toggle attribute kind of told JavaScript, not JavaScript, it told the browser. Wow, I'm tripping over myself here, but that attribute told the browser when this element is clicked, you need to call some JavaScript that's going to toggle the function or whatever. And so this attribute does a similar thing. What it does is when the browser loads, it tells Bootstrap, okay, this slider needs to start sliding. That's as simple as it is. Okay, so let's go ahead and just set that data-ride attribute equal to carousel, and that means that when our page loads, this carousel should start spinning, or start sliding. Great. So from here, there are 3 other groups or 3 other containers that we have to add. And I'm just going to create a lot of space over here because I'm going to leave some comments. So the first comment I want to leave is going to be for indicators. Wow, indicators. No. Okay. Calm down. Breathe, Quentin. We won't make any more typos. from now on. Great. Indicators. Great. And this is also known as .nav. So it's going to be these little dots down here. And I can go ahead and end that comment off. So that is where our indicators are going to be. From or below that, we're going to have a wrapper. So I'm going to create another comment here that says wrapper for slides. And this is where all of our slides will go. Make sure we end that comment off properly. Great. And then below the wrapper for our slides, that is where we put our navigation. So that is going to be these left and right buttons over here. So let me go ahead and make a comment for that. It's actually called the controls or next and prev buttons. Great. So now we know exactly what we're going to do and what we're missing. And so yeah, let's go over and start off with the wrapper for the slides first, seeing as this is like the most interesting part. And I'm going to create a div over here, which is going to hold all of the images. And that is going to have a class of carousel dash inner. And you need to make sure that that is spelt correctly. Then let me go ahead and give this a role, which is going to be equal to list box. This role attribute is not necessary, but it helps like explain to the browser what we are using this div for. So yeah, it's just useful for like screen readers and those kinds of things. But again, we might not, or it's not necessary, so you don't have to add it in basically. Then from here, we need to create a bunch of divs. So I'm going to open up a div tag and I'm going to close that off and just drop that down a line. And each one of these divs is going to be a new slide. So if we have one slide, we'll have one div. But if we have 10 slides, then we'll have 10 of these divs in here. Great. So let me give this a class. And the class is item, which kind of explains itself. And then I'm going to give this one a secondary class, which is active. And this active class should only be on one of your slides, because that is going to be the slide that the slider opens on when you open the web page. Great. So right now that one's active, and generally I guess it will be your first slide. It makes a lot of sense for that to happen. But if you guys want to change it and use the last one, you could do that. Up to you. Great. So let me go ahead and add an image inside of here. So this is going to be the image that shows in the slide. And an image requires two attributes. The first one is the source, and the next one is an alt attribute. And I am going to give the first image a source of fruits.jpg, but that is actually in a folder called images, which is relative to my index file over here. So that means I have to go into the images folder to look for the images, right? So that means I need a source of images slash and then my image name, which is fruits, and that is a JPEG image. Then for an alt attribute, I'm just going to type the word fruits. Hopefully this image is always found and there's never any trouble, so I don't need that alt. But that alt, what that alt does is actually also explain to search engines like Google what this image is actually about. So if you guys want to put something more descriptive in there, go ahead and do that. So now we've got our image. Underneath the image, this is where we add a caption, which is another div tag. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. Make sure that that div is like over 2 lines. We've got some space. And this div needs a class of, I think, carousel-caption. So let's say class carousel-caption. And inside of this div, you guys could pretty much any text that you wanted to put in here. So I'm going to just add in an H1, but if you guys wanted to use paragraphs or something like that, you could go ahead and do that. That's fine. and it's totally up to you how much content you want in this caption. But let me go ahead and close that H1 off, and I'm just gonna say assorted fruits as the content. And now I'm gonna go to the browser and refresh for the first time. So let's hope everything works. And it looks good to me. So we have one slide with a caption. We don't have any navigation at the moment, and we don't have any buttons at the moment. But let's go ahead and continue coding so we can finish this slider. And like I said, each one of our slides is going to be the same as this content, so I can actually just copy all of that and paste that down here. I need to remove that active class because only one of these items should be active, and I'm gonna use the first one, but you guys could use any one you wanted. Great. So from here we now have two slides. I'm just gonna change the content in this caption to be raspberries. And I also want to change that image to, I believe it's called raspberry.jpg. Let me go ahead and open, double check. Yeah, it looks good. Great. So save that. And if I jump back over to the browser now, I should have two slides, but I can't navigate between the two of them just yet because we haven't created any buttons. So that is the next step. And the reason why I was just like kind of waiting is I was waiting for that slide or the timer on that slider to run so we could see that both images are indeed here. Great. So that is our images side sorted. Let's take a look at how to create the next and previous buttons, which will be the two buttons on the side. And that is quite simple. It's actually two links that we need to create. So I'm going to create an A tag, and we can just end that A tag off, but there's going to be some content inside of here. So I'm just going to drop that down a line like that. And this A tag needs a class, first of all, and then we'll have the href in just a second. But I'm going to add a class of left to this first one, and that is because it's going to be for the left button. Then we need to add another class, which is carousel-control. And this is basically telling Bootstrap that this is going to be a control. You kind of need that class there, so don't skip it. And then the href, that is actually going to be set to whatever ID you used up here. So whatever ID you use for the container of the slides, go ahead and copy that. Paste that in here, and make sure to put a hash before this because this is going to be calling some JavaScript. So yeah, href my slider, and that just means that it is calling back to the slider and not like linking to another page or anything like that. Great. And then I'm going to add a role. Now this is, I believe, not necessary, but it is good to have. So let's go ahead and just add this role is equal to button. And what that means is it's telling the browser and it's telling screen readers and stuff out there that we are using this link not as a link, but as a button. Because if you think about it, when you click on this link, you're not going to another page. You're just switching between different slides on the slider. Great. So now that that's in there, we need to add one more attribute, which is data-slide, and we need to set that equal to something. And this attribute basically tells the slider which way to slide when the link is clicked. So I'm going to add a text of prev over here, and that means that when this link is clicked, we need to move to the previous slide, which is also the left slide, or the slide to the left. So yeah, now that that's done, we need to actually add in our arrow, our left arrow. So I'm going to add a span tag over here, and I'm going to give the span a class. Class is equal to glyph icon and glyph icon dash chevron dash left, so that it is an arrow that points to the left. We could also add a secondary attribute of area dash hidden is equal to true. Not necessary, but what it does is hide the arrow if you're not hovering over it or something. Great. So that is our span tag sorted. And then if you guys want to take care of screen readers, because if you want to take care of people with disabilities coming to see your site that are using a screen reader, you might want to add a secondary span, and that will have a class is equal to sr-only, and that just needs some content, so I'm going to say previous. And what this does is hide the span tag, so basically it won't be visible to people who are not using a screen reader, but people who are using a screen reader will know that this is actually a button to go to the previous slide. Yeah, that's just what it's there for. Great. So we've got our left button sorted. All I need to do now is copy that link and paste it again, and then change the content or the class from left to right. Then we also need to change data-slide from previous to next. And we need to change this glyph icon to go to the right instead of to the left. So let's go ahead and hit save. And now if I come back to my browser and hit refresh, you can see I have two arrows over here that we didn't have before. And when I click on them, the slider is moving to the left and to the right. Great, so that's done. The last thing we need to do is add in our indicators or our .nav. So I know this tutorial is getting kind of long, but it's almost done. This one or this part should go quite quick. All we need to do is open up an ordered list and go ahead and close it again. Give this ordered list a class, and I'm going to give it a class of carousel dash indicators, and that is necessary. What it does is pull through the styling to turn each unordered list item into just one little dot and put it down here. Great. So now we need to make a list item, and I'm going to go ahead and close that off. And this list item needs two attributes, so I'm going to go ahead and say data dash target, and this is a necessary attribute. What it does is references back to that slider, so when you click on the list item, it's going to change to the slide that we wanted to change to. And what we need to do is actually grab our ID for our slider, paste that in here, and also use a hash, and that just references back to that slider again, so we know that the target or the data that we want to change is in the slider. And then we need to give this another attribute, which is data dash slide dash to, and that is the slide that we want to slide to. And the first slide in Bootstrap is slide number 0, because we start counting at 0 with computers. Great, so that's now done. I can go ahead and copy this, and I'll paste this down here. And for the second button, we'll just add a 1 to here. So that means we'll now have two dots because we have two sliders. And the first dot is going to link to the first slide, or the 0th slide. And the second dot is going to link to the number 1 slide, or the second slide actually, which is the raspberry slide. And then what you guys need to do is whichever one of your slides has the active class, in my case it's this first one, I'm going to go ahead and copy that, and I'm going to come back up to the top here and just add a class to my 0th slide, which is this one, and I'm going to add that as active as well. And what that does is just turn our dot active for the active slide. Great. Hopefully you kind of understood that. Basically, whichever slide is there kind of needs to have the active class. Great. And here is our active button. There is our non-active button. Click the non-active button, and I can slide between the different slides. Great, awesome. We have now made a slider or a carousel in Bootstrap. How fantastic is that? And that is all I have for you in this tutorial. So don't forget to subscribe. Please feel free to leave a comment, like, and share this video. It's really going to help my channel grow, and I'll see you guys next time.